After recording for 40 minutes yesterday and it just not saving, I cannot have that happen again. Okay, so line 107, we have an ellipses. 4 years passed. So, 4 years passed from when they first met. They have this like relationship going on, intellectual, and then so that's the first break. Then the second break is her touching him. And then we have the third break that's about to come up. The fact that we have an ellipses, once again, it is completely focused on Mr. Duffy's life. So even though we have an omission narrator, it adopts only the point of view and the things that Mr. Duffy does or thinks, kind of, because we don't really have his thoughts, right? The omission narrator, gosh, adopts only things as Mr. Duffy does. We only get his point of view, but the narrator himself is very cold and very detached in his way of transmitting the story to us. He never, the narrator never takes into account Mrs. Sinico, except at the very beginning, right? And to go back to this, because I wanted to talk about the relationship aspect after I touched on this, like, the second part of the break, the second break. So, their relationship is completely unbalanced, because Mr. Duffy does not take into account anything. He doesn't take into account any needs of Mrs. Sinico's. And he doesn't take into account her feelings or anything. He never considers her as an individual. He only uses her for his needs, for his own purposes. There is nothing personal throughout their relationship. They only talk of music, politics, abstract matters, and we never hear her talk except once. It is a self-centered relationship. It's basically just all about him and nothing about her. And the story itself, the way it's transmitted to us, completely evokes that. It's only based around him. As we can see, every single paragraph starts about him, unless there's a break in time, basically. Except, I think once, where it was the meeting her sometimes in return. But everything else, and then here, oh my gosh, it's she asked him why did he not write out his thoughts. Everything else is Mr. Duffy centered. Everything. So, right here. The end of the relationship, Mr. Duffy is the one that puts an end to it. It had been his only bond. So that's quite important, because he's got no one else. He's got no one else except her. The relationship is built on contrast as well. I think I mentioned that early on. She is everything that he is not. She's emotional and she's drawn to others, whereas he rejects anything to do with society, anything to do with other people. He rejects emotions. He rejects anything to do with the physical aspect of the world. He only lives inside his head. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Il a vu quelque chose dehors, je pense. Mais c'est pas possible. J'aurais dû le mettre dans la chambre. Félix, allez s'il te plaît. I guess you don't really need to see me. Okay, so we've got the ellipses. The 4 years passed. We go right back into his point of view. We don't care what happened to Mrs. Sinico in the past 2 years. Past 4 years. We don't care. His life after the end of the relationship is so boring that we don't need to hear about any of it. It goes right back to his little cycle of his routine of nothing is worth mentioning in 4 years. Do not be Mr. Duffy. Do not live like this. You should have many things to talk about in 4 years. Please live your life fulfillingly. Throughout these 4 years, though, Mrs. Sinico suffers an extreme amount. So much so that we have the tragedy. But we don't get her point of view. We don't get that. So, 4 years passed, Mr. Duffy returned to his even way of life. Oh my goodness. His room still bore witness to the orderliness of his mind, although he did gain some new pieces of music. So, still sticking to the music. However, there are 2 new volumes on his shelves of Nietzsche, which is quite interesting. Because after Mrs. Sinico enters his life, Mr. Duffy now broadened his literary... I can do this. He broadened his, literary world. He was like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna read new things. Such a terrible way to word what I'm trying to say. But what are these two works? It's Thus Spake Zarathustra, and The Gay Science. These are quite ironic because bon, Phoenix. Oui, Mao. These are quite ironic because these works promote Dionysian philosophy. Can I say that? I don't know. Wait, I have notes right here that probably say that a lot better than I can. Let's see. Is it here? I feel like there's things in here that I did not say that I should have. Like, the encounter with Mrs. Sinico comes as an element of rupture in his life. It marks a clear turning point in his existence and in the narrative. Although the real turning point in the narrative, for me personally, that I think is really blatantly obvious, is after the newspaper. There's just such a huge shift in the way that the entire story is told. Let's see. Do I not have the... Oh, there it is. Okay. Because what did I write? I wrote, contrary of asceticism, is that how you say that? Asceticism promotes Dionysian, I don't know, I didn't write anything other than that. It's Dionysus, oh my god, so sorry, I literally am bugging out on how to say that. Let me move my screen. Okay. That's better. And then I can do this. Whoop. Alright. So, what is the Dionysian way of life? It's a promotion of, sexual pleasures, bodily pleasures, the fact that life is worth living and life, you must take part in all of life's pleasures, and that it's encouraged. Mr. Duffy is scared of that. He does not want to be a part of that. Let me read what this says. These 2 references seem to be ironic because Zarathustra means the reverse of asceticism, on the contrary, advocating the Dionysian archetype, the visceral and the sexual, according to which life's pleasurable aspect should be encouraged. See, so much better than what I just spurted out. Sorry. Okay. Perfect. I think there's a lot of things in bold, so maybe there are things that I should have mentioned that I did not. Interesting. So when he ends the relationship, he's the one that decides. Symbolically, it happens at the beginning of autumn. The only bond that he had accepted to create is severed. So the fact that it happened at the beginning of autumn is quite interesting. Oh yeah, it was cold autumn weather. Don't know why I didn't catch that, but... Alright. And they do walk through the park, which is interesting because that is another place, and that comes back. My legs hurt from being sat in such a strange position. Okay. I'm leaning, I'm on my hip. Okay. I'm recording this for my classmates, but if I do post this on YouTube for them to watch, I guess anybody's gonna be able to see it's this kind of, sorry to random people that don't know me. Okay. I've been all over the place. These past 10 minutes are much less coherent than the other 2 segments. Okay. So, We go back into his stupid little routine. Sorry, I'm being mean. It's not stupid, it's his life. You know, if you want to live your life like Mr. Duffy, at least it's safe. It's just adventureless. And personally, I find I'm projecting my opinion, but I think that's quite sad. So, line 114, we see that his father died, and the juror partner of the bank retired. So, in 4 years, those are the things that happened. He also stops going to concerts because he doesn't want to see Mrs. Sinico. So he not only rejects any form of pleasure in life. The only pleasure in life that he had was music, notably probably live music. And now, comment on dit se prive? I can't believe I'm starting to lose my English words. He doesn't allow himself to go to concerts by. You are literally ripping my paper. And now you're biting me. You are so mean. What? You're so mean. Leave me alone. What is wrong with you? So he literally doesn't allow himself the only pleasure that he had in life just because he doesn't want to see Mrs. Sinico. Isn't that crazy? Man. I watched a few videos on this and someone was like, there were simps like back then. Like, simps are not new things. And, like, when we see the beginning of, like, how he treats her, I think that's quite funny. Anyways, totally unrelated. So, we go back to his routine by 1:14, and still every morning he went into the city tram, and every evening walked home. And then he dined and read the evening paper for dessert. Third break in the narrative. Third crisis, third interruption, the newspaper. What does this start with? One evening. If we go back, it was also one evening where he met her. So, we've got one evening when he meets her, line 95, one night when she disrupts the physical boundary, and one evening when he reads the paper. Here we have a pretty descriptive image of what he was doing at that very moment. So he's eating, we have a description of his food, and then his eyes, the eyes are coming back, fix themselves on a paragraph, and he starts reading it. He drank a glass of water. I also want to drink some water. Okay. Here, we discover, along with Mr. Duffy, the tragedy of Mrs. Sinico's death. Let me read the notes that I wrote. There is an alteration between routine and crisis. So those are like the breaks that I talked about. There is a coup de théâtre in the paragraph of line 120, which is like the second to last of this. It's like right before the title. And there's zero focalization. It's self-centered around Duffy. I guess these are things that I've already talked about. I think my notes on the beginning of... Oh my gosh, he really ruined my paper. Those are all done. So yeah, there's the structure. Before newspaper and post newspaper. Okay. So, here we have him going back to that park where he broke up with Mrs. Sinico. And he starts to read it. His breath issuing irregularly, almost with a sighing sound condensed in the wintry air. So we've got this like really cold tone to the text. And he goes up to his bedroom and then starts reading. And line 131, moving his lips as a priest does when he reads the prayers secreto. Once again, an illusion. So here we have the newspaper, which is a really interesting way that Joyce does this, is because he basically implements literally what a newspaper article would be like. It's completely matter of fact. It's totally just, there's nothing superfluous, there's nothing added that's too much. It's just all in the details of like the death. So, also we've got the name of the short story here, A Painful Death. Death of a lady at Sydney Parade, a painful death. A painful case. Sorry, I'm reading that wrong. A painful case. So that is the title of the short story, A Painful Case. And so here we have a vague, ambiguous death. We don't know if it is a suicide. It could have been an accident. But then again, Mrs. Sinico is not stupid. T'es en train de mettre ta patte contre le radiateur. Ne te brûle pas, s'il te plaît. She's not stupid. She's a very smart lady. She's very educated. And this cat, he's just biting my papers. Okay. So, sorry. So, I feel like I should stop. No, I got this. It's almost done. Wait, let me start a new segment. Okay. I'll do four, and then I'll be done. Okay, so I'll be right back.